Welcome to Acoustic Guitar and the Basics. What we're going to try to do in this little time that we have together is to discuss some of the fairly rudimentary things about getting started. One of them is understanding the name of the parts of the guitar and what they do in order for us to understand how to play the instrument, such as something like this, like a tuning machine head, which actually keeps this string in tune. We'll also cover off things regarding theory, and the reason for it, in order to understand how a song is built and how to play it, we have to have a common set of discussion points about what a major scale is, what a minor scale is, and we'll go over that quite extensively. In order to play a guitar or any other instrument that has strings, we have to tune it, so we'll talk about how to do that properly. We'll discuss what a chord is, how to build a chord, and we'll cover off some song examples, as well as some things to do with scales. So let's get started. In order to learn how to play guitar, we need to have a common set of terms as to what make the guitar up. The actual wooden box is called the body. Attached to the body is a neck that's either glued on or screwed in, and at the top of the neck is the headstock. Within the body itself is the sound hole where the actual string vibration is amplified. Beneath that is the pickguard that protects the actual guitar body, and then you have the strings that are attached. Next, we're going to zoom in on the guitar body, where you have on the left the guitar neck with a fretboard that's glued onto it, as well as metal frets that have been stamped into the actual fretboard itself. You have the neck heel, a strap pin. The sides of the guitar are named as well, where you have a top shoulder. And on the top shoulder, because this is a specific setup on it, it has optional electronics. You have the guitar top that's made out of a spruce or a cedar, and that actually vibrates with the strings. You have the bridge that is glued onto the guitar top. This also allows the string vibration to be transferred into the guitar top. And for all of the strings that you have there, they are affixed to the bridge via bridge pins, as well as you have the saddle, which can be made out of a man-made material or bone. This is one of the contact points that the strings have to the guitar that actually transfer the string vibration into the guitar itself. Next, we're going to focus in on the top of the guitar where you have the headstock. There are 6 tuning machines that are bolted onto the guitar headstock that allow you to tune the guitar to pitch. In order to do that, there are actually openings or holes in the machine head that's called a string post. You have the nut that is another contact point for the strings on the guitar. So you have the bridge, now you have the nut, and in the nut are cut 6 slots that direct the strings to the actual string posts. Further down, you happen to have a fret, and you also have a position marker, and we'll talk about those a little bit later. How you're able to handle the guitar is going to have an impact on your ability to play it. I strongly suggest that you wear a guitar strap in order to have the body secured against yourself, as well as have potentially a box or a footstand underneath one of your legs in order to bring the guitar closer to you and that it doesn't move around, so that you're not having to use your left hand to control the weight of the guitar other than play the neck. In this next section, we'll talk about the fretboard. On the guitar neck is shown 12 individual frets. These are repeated beyond the 12th fret, so that the 3rd fret would be the 15th, the 5th fret would be the 17th. Next, we have the string order number. The first string is also known as the top string because it's highest in register, and the bottom string is assigned to number 6. Each string is going to be tuned to a specific pitch, ordering from 1st to 6th from highest to lowest. Glued in the fretboard are fretboard position markers. These are shown at frets 3, 5, 7, 9, and 12. Now, there are going to be other markers further up the neck that repeat what's beyond the 12th fret, which is the octave, where they'll be at 15, 17, as well as potentially 19 and 21. The handy thing about the fretboard position markers is that they are guideposts for your waypoints on the neck, so that you can find out where specific things are happening for notes as per each string. So as mentioned, the 12th fret, shown with the 2 dots, is the octave. So you always know if you play an open A on the 5th string and you fret on the 5th string at the 12th fret, that is an A. We're going to cover off a little bit of theory associated with music as it relates to the fretboard, and we're going to use that as a way to understand how we build chords. In this section, we're going to talk about theory and some of the basics associated with scales, and we're going to look at the C major scale in order to get started, which sounds like this. So let's get into it. We're going to use the piano keyboard as a visual aid before we start getting into the guitar fretboard and where notes are located. And this is going to be important because what we're going to talk about is going to have an impact on every major scale that we're going to discuss. So in the C major scale, there are going to be 8 notes, but in order for those 8 notes to be built up, we have to go 12 individual steps. If you look at the piano keyboard, in order for me to go from the C on the left-hand side, which is the lowest register C, I have to press a black key. We're going to assign that black key a value of a half. If I go to the D, I have to press a white key. We're going to assign that a value of a half, or a half step. If I combine those two, the black and the white key to go from C to D, that's a whole step. So as you can see, I have a formula that's on the screen where you can see whole step to go from C to D, whole step to go from D to E, a half step to go from E to F, a whole step to go from F to G, a whole step to go from G to A whole step to go from A to B, and a half step to go to C, which is the octave, the highest register in this particular example. The advantage with this is that on the piano keyboard, this particular arrangement repeats itself throughout. But on the guitar, you have the same type of arrangement as per string, and the locations as to where those notes are going to be related to each string is going to be different, which is why we use those fretboard markers as guideposts to tell us where we're going to be in relation to the string and potentially a note location. Now, in the C major scale, there are no sharps and flats. And what those are the black keys, as mentioned. They're a little bit of an unusual thing because if I go to C to D, that's fine. It's not going to change its name if I go from D to C, if I descend versus ascend. Whereas the black keys, their names do change depending on which direction you're going in a scale. So if I happen to go from C to D, the black key is going to be called C sharp. The black key is in between C to D. Now, as we have a look here at this example, we're going to go from D to C. And because we're going from D to C, we're descending, and the black key between D and C is now labeled D flat instead of C sharp. This is because of music convention that the note names do change because of things associated with scales. However, the one thing to keep in mind is that the pitch between C to D doesn't change. So if I go C to D, that's going to have a black key that's C sharp in between. That C sharp stays the same pitch. If I go from D to C, I'm descending. That note name in between becomes D flat, and again, it still has the exact same pitch. Now we're going to look at an example of the fretboard using the second string where we're going to examine the C major scale. If you have a look at the piano keyboard graphic at the top of the screen when compared to the dots on the fretboard, notice how the spacing between the frets matches the spacing on the piano keyboard for the white keys and the black keys. Okay, so we've talked about scales, and now we want to be able to discuss how to get this instrument actually in tune. And the fundamentals are this. If you look at this string, we're going to turn this tuning machine head key either in this direction in order to tune it up, or we're going to tune it the opposite way, which is this direction, clockwise, in order to bring it back to pitch. The key about this is anytime you tune a guitar, if it happens to be too sharp, which means the pitch is too high, where we go up to this, tune the guitar down first, then tune it up to pitch. And the reason being is that at times what will happen, the string will snag in the nut slot, and what will happen as you play the guitar, the string will accidentally go slack on you and you'll have to retune it again. On the guitar, each individual string is tuned to a specific pitch. The top string, number 1, is tuned to E. If you notice, the bottom string, number 6, is also tuned to E. The second string is tuned to B, the third string tuned to G, the fourth string tuned to D, and the fifth string tuned to A. Modern guitar tuners will have a display on them. Every single one will react to your strumming or plucking of the string. If you're close to the right note value that you're supposed to be, in this case the 6th string, it will display E, and you'll see a needle moving left or right as you get closer to pitch. If you're below the pitch, it'll be to the left. If you're above the pitch, meaning that you're sharp, it'll be to the right. The thing about these tuners is that they all are set up in such a way that they default to concert pitch, which is A440, and we're going to review what that tone sounds like. We're going to start tuning the guitar together. We're going to start with the 6th string, which should be in E, the 5th string in A, the 4th in D, the 3rd in G, the 2nd in B, and the 1st string in E. In this section, we're going to talk about chords, and chords are built up of multiple notes played simultaneously within the scale. In order for us to be able to do that, you have to be able to put your fingers on the strings and be able to play them all at once like this. And I'm sure you've heard that sequence before. As an introduction to chords, chords are made out of a series of notes that belong to a specific scale. Using the C major scale as an example, there are 8 notes that make up the scale, which are C, D, E, F, G, A, B, and then again C for the octave. Going back to the earlier discussion that we had about chord formulas, the C major scale is made out of 3 specific notes, which consist of the root, also known as the tonic of the chord, which is the first note within the scale, the 3rd, and the 5th. Now for the C major scale, that happens to be C, E, and G. In order to quickly learn how to play the guitar, songs, and what chords are associated with those songs, there are things called chord diagrams. They are little pictorial diagrams as to where your fingers go relative to the fretboard, and as you look at them, everything is always positioned with the headstock in the up position, so that the 6th string is going to be to the left and the 1st string is going to be to the right of the diagram. The solid dots on the diagram represent where your fingers go. The X means that you don't play that string, and the open circles are for the open strings. In this video, I'm going to use this basic chord diagram with a color scheme to represent the open strings, which will be green dots. The strings that you put your fingers on will be shown with orange dots, and if you see a red box with an X, you do not play that string. In order to know which fingers are placed on the fretboard, they're assigned numbers. The index finger being number 1, the middle finger number 2, the ring finger 3, and the pinky number 4. Classic musical notation features a series of staffs on a page, as well as what note you're going to be playing within that staff, represented by a series of dots. What we have on the screen is actually something called a lead sheet, which is a dumbed down version of how to look at a song. This is contained in what's called a fake book, which makes things a lot easier to navigate through if you're learning a song for the first time. In this instance, we're looking at the top of the screen. On the left-hand side, you see the letter C. That represents the chord of the song that we're going to play, and we're going to learn those chords as we get a little bit further in. Beneath that, you have a treble clef, and to the right of the treble clef is a time signature with the two numbers 4 above one another. That means there's 4 beats to a bar. On the top line, you have 4 bars, and those are separated with vertical lines. Within the bars, you have 4 slashed lines. That means that you're going to play the chord of C 4 times per bar, or we're going to play it 16 times. Beneath that is the letter F, which would be played for 8 times, C again for 8 times, G for 4 times, F 4 times, C 4 times, F twice, and G twice. In this section, we're going to talk about songs in order how to play them. But in order to play a song, you also need to know how to play the chords that are associated with it. One of the things that you're going to ask your hands to do are play shapes that your fingers are not used to being able to do. So for example, with C, we want to be able to put your fingers on the neck like so. And the key to it is making sure that you have your fingers curled in such a way that you do not cover over the note that is going on to the next string. So as I have my finger, my third finger on the 3rd fret on the 5th string, I don't want it to block the other one like this. I need to curl my hand up to make it sound clear. And a C shape should sound like this. And we'll do that again. Now we're going to go on to the F shape, where you're going to use your first finger or your index finger to go across all 6 strings, just like so, and you're going to place your other fingers in this pattern, and you're going to see a diagram as well that'll help. And it sounds like this. The last example that we have for this first song is a G shape, or G major, where you're going to use your pinky on the 1st string, 3rd fret, your 2nd finger on the 3rd fret of the 6th string, and your index finger on the 2nd fret of the 5th string, and it should sound like this. Make certain that you don't have the 3rd finger in the way. Curl it away because it's going to help you for strength. We'll do that again. Okay, so on to some actual examples that will be on screen that you'll be able to follow along with what we've just done. In this next section, we're going to cover off how to play your very first song. In order to do that, we need to understand some terminology with respect to strumming. And so we have the key all sorted out, which the song is in the key of C, and we're going to play the very first chord, which is C itself. And what we're going to do, the very first bar, as mentioned, has a count of 4, which is counted as 1, 2, 3, 4. You're going to do that 4 times. So if you don't feel comfortable about playing 4 times, do this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So what we need to do is go from C, and then we're going to go to the next chord, which is F. Going to one chord to another is called a transition. So we're going to transition from C to F. 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we're going to go back to C. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. The next chord is going to come up, which is G. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then we're going to go ahead and play F again. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we're going to play C for another count of 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And this is where the tricky part comes. We're going to go to F for a count of 2. 1, 2. Then you're going to play G for a count of 2. 1, 2. And then if you want to start the song again, you go back to the head or the top of the song, where you're now going to play C, 1, 2, 3, 4, and you just go through that cycle. As we've already talked about the C major scale and how to build major chords, minor chords are built in the same way, where there are 8 notes per scale. In this instance, we're going to use the C minor scale as a starting point, where you have C as the root or the tonic. You have D, E flat, F, G, A flat, B flat, and C. So if we have a look, the differences between the C major scale and the C minor scale is a flatted third, a flatted sixth, and a flatted seventh. In order to build a C minor chord, we're going to use the root, which is C, the flatted third, which is the E flat, and the fifth, which is the G. All right, so we've gone through our first song played with major chords. In the next upcoming song, we're going to play this in minor chords, or some of the chords will be substituted for minor chords. And in order to understand the difference in sound, you have C, which sounds bright and happy, and we have C minor, which kind of sounds mysterious or a bit sad. Then you have F minor, and you have G minor. Many pop songs, R&B, rock and roll, blues, and country feature a chord type called a seventh chord. And these are built from the major and the minor three-note chords that we've already discussed by adding a fourth note, which happens to be the seventh note within the scale. Major seven chords are built from the root, the third, the fifth, and the seventh. Dominant seven chords, commonly referred to as the seventh chord, is the root, the third, the fifth, and the flatted seventh. Minor seven chords are the root, the flatted third, the fifth, the flatted seventh, and a chord type that's quite common in jazz is a minor 7 flat 5. I just want you to be aware of it because it is something that you may come across in some songs, but this is built from the root, the flatted third, the flatted fifth, and the flatted seventh. Dominant seven chords, or the seventh chord, is built from the root, the third, the fifth, and the flatted seventh. For the C scale, we're going to use C, E, G, and B flat. In this next version of the song, we're going to substitute some of the chords for what are called dominant seven or seventh chords. And those are going to be changing from C to C7, where you had F, you now have F7, where you had G, you now have G7. Minor seventh chords are built from the root, the flatted third, the fifth, and the flatted seventh. So from C, it's C, E flat, G, and B flat. In this next version, we're going to substitute some of the chords that we've already covered off for minor seventh chords. So we've learned how to play C, C7, this is C minor 7. We've learned how to play F, F minor, and now we're going to play F minor 7. We know how to play G, G7, and this is G minor 7. Okay, so let's get into it. Lastly, we're going to review major seventh chords. These are built out of the root, the third, the fifth, and the seventh, or in the C scale, C, E, G, and B. All right, so in this last version of the song, we've gone over now 4 prior versions for the chords of C, F, and G. In this last one, we're going to do the same thing for major 7 chords. And so for C, it sounds like this. C major 7, you remove your 1 finger. We've covered F. And F major 7 in the open position sounds like this. We've covered off G. And now G major 7 sounds like this. All major 7 chords have a bit of a mysterious, dreamy sound to them. And we're going to go through those with diagrams. In this last section on chords, I want to cover off a thing called a bar chord. All of the shapes that we've talked about thus far are called open position chords, where I have strings that are ringing that my fingers aren't holding down. So what I want to do next is I want to be able to play those positions in a different way that has a more rock sound. So for example, we know that the chord of F in the first position, because the root of F is on the 6th string, 1st fret. So it sounds like this again. But now I want to be able to play E, which is in the reference chart. This is the first position of E, and the root of E is on the 6th string, open. Okay, so we know that because of our C scale that it's E, F, G. So that's the root of G. So I'm going to take the shape that I have for F and I'm going to move it up 2 frets. All right, in this next example, we know how to play C. So C in the open position is played like this. Now, we know that the first position of the chord B, because B happens to be on the 2nd fret of the 5th string, that's C. This is the shape to play B. If I want to play C, guess what happens? I move that shape 1 fret up. If I want to play D, I move it 2 frets up. So bar chords are kind of handy ways of being able to play songs to sound more of a rock-oriented flavor versus the open position chords, which will be more oriented towards folk songs and country. In this last section, we're going to cover off scales and scale shapes. And I want to show you a couple of simple ones that you can take across the guitar fretboard based on where the root note begins. So in this instance, it's C. that same shape is going to be able to be transferred to playing G. Now, if you notice, we just played G in a position where you have G starting on the 3rd fret, 6th string, and I carried my way down this way. But I can also play G this way. So keep that in mind as you look at the examples. As you can see here, we happen to have the note C mapped across the neck at least once per string for all 6 strings. Each note within a major or minor scale can be played at least once per string on the guitar. What we're trying to do is make it easy to play a scale without having to bounce around the neck too much. And in this instance, we want to try and keep those notes within a scale within the reach of 3 to 5 frets. What we're going to do is try and find the lowest note on the actual guitar neck so that we can start off with C, which we found it with the orange diamond shown on the 5th string, 3rd fret. And as we move up the scale, every single note that is not the root is going to be featured as a circle. This is very common to a lot of scale diagrams, as well as what you can see in the actual chord diagrams themselves, depending on whose book you're looking at. So we're going to go from the 3rd fret to the 5th fret on the 5th string to the 4th string with E, F, G, A, B, and C. Now the thing is that the spacing between this is the same formula that we had before, which would require us to count 12 half steps in order to go from C to C.
you